myself. And today's topic is intimacy and relationships. It'll be pretty much it'll be for everybody, whether you're single in a relationship, whether it's complicated. What's that new thing? The entanglements that people have right now. It'll work for everybody. So we'll go from there. So yeah. So right now, like a lot of things is going on, especially with COVID, right? People are stuck in the house. People are stressed and things like that. So
Mhm.
what is your take on how people can kind of alleviate that stress and smooth things out in their relationships? Like some of the domestic violence rates have gone up. Some people have gotten divorced during this time and things like that. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so much, right, Carl? But before I even go in there, do you know how excited I get every time I get to come on here with you? I'm always like, I'm gonna be with my brother Carl. I'm not sure if everybody in the audience really knows, but we met in high school in Seoul, Korea. And all these years later, we get to still work together and make something beautiful, like these talks and things like that. So thanks for having me back, Carl. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, and so I guess that actually goes into the name of the whole segment, right? It's the soul perspective, right? And it's actually
Yeah.
based off of Soul Korea, and it's our perspective on different things that are going on right now. And it's usually around like mental health and things like that, and just really just healthy mind, healthy soul.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, you're so right, Carl. There's so much going on with people. First, there's so much going on with people right now when we're
Right.
talking about this pandemic, right? We're talking about people who are questioning their finances and their stability, questioning their future, questioning their physical health, and then questioning their mental health. Folks who are comparing themselves to social media more. I have I'm not a brand ambassador for Apple or anything, but I have an iPhone and my iPhone tells me how much screen time I've been on, and it'll tell me where I'm spending most of that time, like whether it's on social media. And we're seeing so many more people on social media more, which is also places of enjoyment, but also places where people end up comparing themselves, which we know is unhealthy. There's very much a difference between inspiration and comparison. And so we're individually going through so much, individually trying to process so much, individually trying to stay afloat, and while still also having goals and hopes for what we identify as success. And then we combine that with another person going through their own individual things, their own individual processes, their own hopes and dreams or disappointments or fears. And we bring these two people who are both going through a lot, and we bring them together and call it a relationship. Now, indeed, many folks were in a relationship before the pandemic hit, and they're seeing all the changes that are happening now, because now you really see how your partner handles stress. Now you really see how your partner handles communication when their brain is kind of going through a whole lot. Now you really see who's motivated and who's not motivated when the gyms are closed down, and when you can't go out to drink and when you can't do the things that you normally do. Now you see a whole different side of a person, and you're like, who the hell is this? This is not what I signed up for, right? And so there's so much of that complexity that's there, that I think folks are going into this survival mode and not necessarily being constructive. Like, we're trying to just stay afloat as opposed to wanting to build something beautiful. And so when you and I got together and said we were going to talk today, it was really important for me to kind of spend some time talking about intimacy with couples. For yes, intimacy with yourself. We can take some time and talk about that as well, because there is a such thing. I don't know how crazy we could get on here, Carl, but there is a such thing as intimacy with yourself, and we're gonna talk about that, and then intimacy with other people too. And the major takeaway that I want people to have, and I'm giving you the takeaway beforehand, and then I'm going to break it down. We're going to break it down. The major takeaway is that your body, your actual physical body, has a hormone, a chemical hormone called oxytocin, which you need to use, which allows you to bond with yourself and with someone else, but it also naturally calms you down. It is a calming hormone.
Okay.
And so when we get stressed in other ways, maybe our adrenaline is high, or our cortisol is high, or we're like frustrated over here, having the introduction of that oxytocin into the bloodstream will calm us down very quickly. And the primary ways oxytocin is released is through intimacy, and I'm going to say intimacy versus sex, because some folks say that it's released during sex, but you don't have to have sex to release it. What happens for our body is that when you touch yourself or you touch somebody else, the mere intentionality and calmness around the touch is what releases the oxytocin. Women release oxytocin 4 times the rate of men.
Okay.
As a woman, I want to say that's why we calmer than y'all, but I'm not gonna go there because I know that I don't need none of your guys coming onto my Instagram giving me a hard time. But women have more oxytocin only because we carry children, and we release oxytocin when we're bonding with our child as well. Okay. That's the scientific piece. So the takeaway that we're going to break down is you have to have intimacy in your life so that you could be calm, especially during this pandemic. You have to have intimacy. No doubt about it. So one of the major ways that single folks have intimacy is with themselves, right? Of course, you can date somebody, you can do all the things, but I am here as Dr. Plummer telling you, you need to go ahead and masturbate. Go ahead and do it, right? You see how I did that punch right there? Like right there. Go ahead and do it. And the reason you need to do it is because even when you touch yourself, you bond with yourself, right? That sounds crazy as hell, right, Carl? Like, how do I bond with myself? Right. But when you're dealing with, like, say, self-esteem issues or some depression issues, when you're having any type of mental health issues or even tough stress, what happens is that we disconnect from ourselves and we compartmentalize what's happening over there versus what's happening with our body, right? It is how we oftentimes don't pay attention to what's going on with our physical body because we've learned to disconnect. Okay. But when you are masturbating, you're very intentional about what's happening in that moment, right? Like, you know, whatever your outcome is that you want to have your outcome is, but you're connected with your body, and that causes your body to connect with your soul, with yourself. And so it's important to masturbate, whether you're single or in a relationship, because it allows you to connect with yourself. Do you have any questions before I go there? Because I know that sounds crazy.
No, it's interesting because, like, a lot of times, you know, we get people that's like, oh yeah, like when they're by themselves, like they feel like they're bonding with themselves, but it doesn't involve masturbation, right? Or you get people who are in these relationships who might get offended when the partner masturbates, and things on that level, but not really understanding that I guess it's actually beneficial to the relationship at the same time, and it's nothing against the partner. And then you get into the fact that some women are like, they're totally against also masturbating themselves. And so there's probably some other effects to that as well. So it's interesting, especially when you say that that women release that 4 times rate as men. So is there a rate of depletion? Like, is there a way that kind of, like, you know, that runs out and that affects your attitude or affects your mental state or whatever, or your emotions and things like that? Or how does that actually work?
Yeah, there is. Let me get back to some of those other points that you highlighted too, though. You know, I think that many people just are, it's crazy to me when I talk to folks, especially when I'm talking to couples, single folks too, and because as a therapist, I ask all the questions. Our job as therapists is to ask the questions that nobody else asks, right? And we know that sometimes it's going to make people uncomfortable, but we just kind of go with the flow. I often ask people about their sex life, not just their sex life with other people, but their sex life with themselves. How can you truly have a pleasurable sexual experience if you don't even know what you like? You know what I mean? Like, if you don't even know that this is the move and this is the angle and, you know, this is the position, or this is the lightness of the touch or the heaviness of the touch. Because what's really happening in sex is not just about how these two organs interact with each other. It's also about the physical touch that's related to that, right? Because our body has so many nerve endings. When you're intimate with somebody, your nerves are being stimulated. And when your nerves are stimulated, your mind is stimulated. And all of these things are happening. It's the mindfulness of it. So when folks tell me like, I don't really masturbate because, I think that's against God and that's against this, or, I'm insecure about my body. And I'm like, sis, bruh, how you insecure about masturbating, but you're going to let somebody else touch you, right? Like, why are you giving somebody else all of that power? And you're dependent on them for the release of your oxytocin. You're dependent on them for your sexual satisfaction. You're dependent on them for your own comfort when you have the power to do it yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, why give all the power away all the time when you could do it yourself?
And sometimes it actually turns into power for other people, because if you think about it, right? So some people might not have been into this stuff. They don't know what they like. So they find that other person that actually hits all the right buttons, and now they're hooked, and then their whole attitude changes, like, oh, and so they're in more of a, probably maybe a lustful type state or whatever when it comes to that relationship, as opposed to anything else, and it becomes more emotional at that point for the wrong reasons. Probably it is probably because they haven't figured out what they actually need and how to explain it to other people as well. But this one person was able to figure it out for them. So that actually brings up some other interesting points at that.
Yeah, and about that, what I didn't want to go too scientific with it, because, I do like that stuff though. But when you're having sex and you are close to reaching an orgasm, dopamine is released in your body as well. So you're already releasing oxytocin because of the touch and the bonding, but then you're releasing dopamine. So when people are in these lustful kind of relationships, what's really happening. So dopamine is the same hormone chemical that's released when you get a high. Dopamine is responsible for like the highs, right? So that's where the word dope comes from, when we call drugs dope, because it's the synthetic form of the dopamine that's in our brain. So when we're having sex and we release dopamine and we release oxytocin, you keep going back to that person that you don't like, because of the release of the oxytocin and the dopamine. You're not even paying attention to that. That's what's happening, because most of us don't know anything about oxytocin and dopamine. So it's not that you like the sex or that you like that person. It's that you like what you feel after the sex, not just during the sex, but right after the sex, when all those hormones are released, because you go into this high. And so that's how we find people consistently in these situations. And it's kind of like, if you know, you don't, say it again.
Those situationships.
Them situationships. And I be sitting there like, you don't even like her. You don't even like him. And they still be going back. And I be like, listen, sis, I'm telling you, if you just masturbate and you do it your own way, you don't need that person over there, right? Like, yes, there's a few things you're gonna miss, but you could still get that chemical high while you're connecting with yourself and your intimacy. It's so funny that you mentioned that some people don't like when their partners masturbate too. And that's so counterproductive. One, if your partner is masturbating, they're connected with themselves and they're more mindful about what they like, which means that they can tell you what they like, and you guys don't have any issues around pleasing each other. There's no gaps in the pleasure because your partner knows what they like. So encourage them to go ahead and do that. Some women have difficulties with their men masturbating because they think that if the guys release, say, semen, that they're not going to have any more, right, for their experience, or they're going to get tired and worn out after they had this orgasm, so they're not going to be able to perform over here. It's actually quite the opposite. It's kind of like working out. The more you work out, the more endurance you end up having. Not to say that, guys, y'all need to go out there and be masturbating 3 times a day so you could, like, hook up with your girl or your guy later on. I don't know, everybody's sexual orientation.
It's that pregame, right?
Right. Like, yeah, you pre-gaming. You getting ready for the real thing right here. It's okay. So it's always funny when people be like, oh, if he masturbates, then he not gonna have nothing for me. Sis, bruh, he gonna have even more for you. So don't even worry about that, right? Because it's really a matter of endurance versus anything else.
Okay. And that's a different take on it, right? Because a lot of times I hear it for different reasons, whereas like some people just get jealous of, like, so what are you looking at? What are you thinking about when you're doing it? What are you looking at? Like, oh, that isn't like me. So, oh, that's what you want, So it kind of turns it. So it's that's the first time I've ever heard it explained the way you said it, as some people coming in like, oh, you don't have enough for me. Or I see a lot of the thing argument around sometimes is, oh yeah, that's what you like, that's what you want. Oh, you want me to, and it's kind of like, no, but like, that works for me right now, So it's just, I don't know. It's interesting to see that there's actually other conversations around that and not just that one side.
Well, yeah, because what you're also introducing is porn, right? Or visualizations that don't include the other person, and that is in addition to masturbation. You don't have to necessarily watch porn in order to masturbate, but you probably will have some sort of visualization. I'm all for it. You know what I mean? People do what they want to do as long as it's legal. I'm good, right?
Right.
In terms of that, though, people do feel really insecure about it, and that's when I go back to couples. Hopefully couples that are married, because it's a little safer legally, but make your own porn. Like, go ahead and get out there and do something that's fun for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't be such a like a stick in the mud, right? Like, on the flip side of this, Carl, I do a lot of couples counseling, right? And counseling right before people are considering separation and divorce. And one of the things that does show up is that there's a lack of intimacy and sex, because those are two different things. And sometimes it's because people have these images around what is appropriate sexual behaviors and what's not. But sex is a form of expression, just like our fashion is a form of expression, our hair is a form of expression. Sex is a form of expression in terms of what your body can do. And so try it out. See what your body can do. See what where you have strength, where you have power. See where you may want to make some improvements. Like, people keep thinking of sex, and many people think of sex in these very prudish ways, right? Like, I'm only a lady, so I'm only supposed to do this, or I'm a gentleman and I'm supposed to do this, or I'm this big masculine man, so I can't let her or him touch me in these places. Why? Why not? Like, why? That it doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Go out and do the things that you want to do. Every single part of your skin has a nerve ending. Stimulate every single nerve. That's my take, right? That's the doctor's advice. Stimulate every single part of your body, because you're going to experience a sensation that you've never experienced before. And it's perfectly fine. That's what the nerve is there for. It is there to be stimulated. It's not there just to not have any function. I was talking to some folks the other day, and I was like, if your partner want them to lick the knee, then lick the knee. There's a nerve ending at the knee. You don't know what that's gonna do for the person. So have fun with the process is basically what I'm saying. Don't be a prude about it, because for what?
Real quick though, so for the people that actually make their own porn, just a quick thing: if you make it, remember that you made it, and don't go stabbing your significant other thinking that they were with somebody else when it was actually you. That was actually the news like a couple of days ago, and this is the craziest thing. Like, this lady stabbed her husband because she found pictures of him having sex with somebody, and it happened to be her. She thought it was somebody else. So like I said, if you make these videos and take these pictures, remember that it's you that take them, and remember what you look at that time, so you don't check it on your husband or things other later on. That's what I'm saying. All right.
Are you serious, Carl?
I'm dead serious.
Oh my God, did he make it though?
Yeah, I believe he made it. Yeah.
Listen, I wonder how they gonna bounce back from that. I don't even. He's probably gonna be like, Slim, I can't even trust you no more. Like, we did this together. Oh my God, that's horrible. Oh my goodness. Her body probably look a little different.
That's what I said. Remember what you looked like at that time too. That's why I said that. So, but anyway.
Oh my God. So whether you're in a relationship with yourself, or in a relationship or not in a relationship, it's always good to go ahead and still have sexual experiences with yourself, intimate experience with yourself. For folks that don't like masturbating, you can also have those intimate experiences in really interesting ways. Like when you're showering, instead of using like a loofah or a shower towel, you can put the soap on your hands and you could clean your body with just your hands, right? Because that hand, the intimacy is around the hand touching the body, because those are nerve endings that are getting stimulated too. And so then that releases the oxytocin. So for folks, I want people to masturbate. For folks who don't, make sure that you're still finding moments to just touch yourself intentionally and calmly. So it could be when you're taking a shower and you're using your soap. It can be when you're putting on your lotion or your oils. Some of us as Black folks, we using all the oils and the shea butters and the cocoa butters and stuff like that. But when you put the butter on, or you're melting your oil in your hand, just being intentional and taking a few minutes to like just be in that moment and then touching yourself calmly in those beautiful ways. Which means you can't rush, right? Like you can't, sometimes, Carl, we put on the stuff and we hit ourselves and we just going real fast and then we throw on our clothes and but there's no intimacy in that. It's really a matter of, and my skin just right now was like, girl, why you hit us so hard? But it's really a matter of that smoothness, that intentionality. And then you realize that you start having different kind of thoughts when you're touching yourself in those ways, and not always sexual thoughts, but calming thoughts, because the oxytocin is getting released.
So I guess that explains why it takes y'all sometimes so long to put lotion on after the shower. Makes sense.
And it's also why we may be calmer, because we're taking our time and we're releasing all of our oxytocin and doing all the things.
Right. We just slap that butt on and be like, all right, you ready to go? Like...
Exactly. I want you to take some time, Carl. Put some lotion on your body really calmly and all those things. Try it tonight and see. And if it works, go ahead and send me a message and be like, all right, sis, it worked. And if it didn't work, it's gonna work. So
I'll be more intentional about
it. Please. And the same when we're like washing our face and stuff. Sometimes we're moving so fast, but the oxytocin is released when you have the touch, when the touch is there. And it's slow enough and it's calm enough. So even when we're like washing our face, when we get into the relationship piece, there's intimacy in that as well. Oftentimes in our society, we use intimacy and sex as interchangeable words, as if they're synonymous, and they're not. So the same way that you could be intentional about putting lotion and oil on somebody, you could have that same level of intention and intimacy with your partner. You can put lotion or oil on your partner. It doesn't necessarily have to turn into a massage or anything like that, but just the touch of, touching somebody and being calm about it. It's the same when couples are deciding to shower together, right? Like decide not to use towels that day and just use your hand and wash your partner's body with just your hand. For some people that becomes sexually stimulating, and then things go down in the shower and, then it's bing, bang, boom, you know what I'm saying? And people having fun, right? But then sometimes it's just a matter of connecting physically. Okay. For folks who feel limited in those ways, you can also just hold hands. You know what I mean? Your oxytocin is also released when you're just holding hands, because again, it's all about the touch. It's about the closeness. If folks they're not hold-handing kind of people, but they like to watch TV shows and movies together, sit really close to your partner where your skin is touching. That may mean that for the guys, you guys are like adjusting your boxer shorts or something like that, so more of your leg is exposed, so it's touching your partner's leg. Huh?
So show a little leg, got you.
Show a little leg, fellas, show a little leg, but make sure that your skin is touching. And if you're cuddling, try cuddling without a shirt on or something, just so that, again, the skin is touching. So it intensifies the intimacy. You can cuddle with clothes on, like the way you do at like when we used to go to the movie theaters and things like that, but it intensifies the intimacy when the skin is touching, when both parties' skins are touching, because that's how the oxytocin is released, and then it exchanges. So first, the oxytocin is released in our body, and just like pheromones that come out, I think everybody's familiar with pheromones, like the way you attract to somebody because of the way of their natural hormones, their natural smells and things like that. Those things are in our body and it expels out. Oxytocin expels out also. So if you're sitting next to your partner, the oxytocin is released in your body, but then it connects to your partner's body. And then there's like this chemical exchange that's kind of happening there. So that's how you increase the intimacy without necessarily having to have sex. Yeah. How does that sound? It sounds crazy. It sounds scientific. Like people gonna be like, Carl, why you bring her on here again talking about science? I'm just trying to have sex, and she over here talking about cuddle.
Hey, but check this out. They gotta look at that from a different angle. Like, okay, so this is how I actually make this better and makes them want to do this more with me, right? So it's like, all right, you understand the science and why it happens, and a lot of times having an explanation of why something occurs makes people actually want to do it more, as opposed to just go do it because we say it works, right? And that's it really. And I learned that based off of just coming up in like the sports world and working out, things like that. Like, yeah, just go do this. I'm like, yeah, but why should I do this? You know what? I'm gonna skip this because you're not really telling me why, and I feel like this is pointless. So I'm gonna just get right down to it, right? And so
Exactly.
now, otherwise, kind of like things like foreplay or just the little things, right? Sometimes that little touch it plays into the whole thing with love languages, which is a whole nother conversation, right? So it's just different reasons why you should probably just go down that road and try different things, and those explanations actually help with that. So you gotta take it what it is and just run with it, really.
Yeah, especially while we get older too, right? I just turned 40 in September, and recognizing that the sexual experiences that I had when I was in my 20s and my 30s, I have different expectations now, right? Because I'm 40. I know myself better. I know what I want differently. But as we are growing in relationships, there's also maturity that comes with that. You don't always have to have sex in order to feel connected. Sometimes you could just be with each other, physically touching, and you feel connected. But even if that leads to sex, the sexual experience is usually so much more better, right? So much more better. What kind of language is that, right? Like it's so much better. And we call it foreplay, right? Like it's all this stuff that happens beforehand, but the foreplay usually happens right before the sexual experience, like within those 30 minutes before the sex happens. You can have intimacy and be created intimacy all day long. And then by the time y'all get to the bed or the couch or the shower or wherever y'all gonna do the thing, the window seal, the outside, the car, I don't know where y'all gonna do the thing, but by the time you do it, it's going to be intensified because throughout the whole day, you've been getting sparks of oxytocin and sparks of dopamine. So you've been on different highs all day long because you've been kind of building up to it. And so because we have couples that are at home all day, some of the things that we can do is, when you see your partner in the kitchen, just slowly brush by them. Make sure that your hand is touching a part of their skin. It's going to release the oxytocin. Do the little kick. What Erykah Badu had a song called Kiss Me on My Neck, right? Like do the little kiss on the neck, right? Because again, your lips have nerve endings. You ever burnt your lip? Yes, your lip has nerve endings, and it's going to connect with that other person's skin and their nerves. And so all of those things create different senses of intimacy. What it also does is when you brush by your partner and you touch their skin, it calms them down. So even if they're having a really rough day and you just happen to brush by, or you come and you plant a kiss for them, or you rub their behind, or whatever the intimate moments are that you guys have, it calms them down and it allows them to have a better work day, allows them to think more effectively, to solve problems differently. And intimacy, not just sex, but intimacy creates this sense that you belong and someone cares about you, right? So it's not, sometimes sex just feels like the act of sex to release, to orgasm, but the intimacy piece feels like a matter of care, like you're paying attention, you're caring about me, you are noticing the things that really matter and the things that don't. You care about whether I'm calm in this moment. You care about whether I'm thinking well in this moment. You care about how I feel in this moment. And you don't have to talk. You just touch. And in touching me, I release this oxytocin. And in touching me, I release this dopamine. And in touching me, I feel better about myself and I feel better about you too. And again, it doesn't always have to just be sex. It doesn't have to lead to sex. Now it can, right? It could lead to a quickie. It could lead to something a little bit more, but it's the intimacy that I really wanted to talk about, because when we release the oxytocin with our partner and we stay bonded with them, it actually prevents a lot of other issues that I see showing up in couples. So when couples come to me for couples counseling, I do prescribe sex for them. I actually make it part of their homework. And of course, it feels odd for them in the beginning because it's so regimented, like they have to do it, but and it feels like not natural, but it's okay because eventually they get into the relaxation and the habit of it, and it works out for them. And I have a high success rate with my couples. Again, I'm non-traditional in a lot of ways, but I know the science behind a lot of the stuff that's happening with our brains. And I think if we incorporate those scientific perspectives, then it makes the interpersonal interactions a lot easier.
So yeah, so basically, yeah, a lot of times it's get that slow tease in throughout the day just to build up for later on, and be spontaneous about it, right? White bodies get a little slap on the under cheek, real gentle, things like that, just help build it out throughout
or
the day.
hard. Some people might like it hard.
It depends. Again,
everybody don't want it gentle. Sometimes they want to.
It all comes down to knowing yourself and knowing how you like it, whether it's a little soft, gentle. Sometimes the switch up helps a lot too, so just slowly build it up throughout the day and be ready for the night.
Yep. And you'll find that your experience is so much different, right? Like, because it's intensified again. Right. And so what your partner normally has done, they may still do that the same way that they normally do it. However, it feels different for you because, again, your body has been relaxed throughout the day, or you've had some anticipatory thoughts throughout the day, or some visualization throughout the day, all of which is happening when you release that oxytocin. Oxytocin is also fun because it's released during bonding when moms are nursing their children or laying on the chest. It's also the most recent studies have also said that oxytocin is released with fathers when their babies are laying on their chest as well. So we used to think that it was just moms, but men are releasing oxytocin too. Again, it's the connection, the skin to skin connection that's there. That's the biggest thing that I want folks to highlight, that it can happen with your clothes on, but it's going to intensify the moment that your skin is touching each other. And so for couples that are struggling, what I often find is that one of the first things to go is sex and intimacy, right? Like, I'm mad. So say, you and I are in a relationship and I'm mad at you. Right. I still have to talk to you because we still have to cook dinner tonight. We still got to pay bills. Somebody still got to decide who's taking care of the kids. So we're still going to be talking to each other. But maybe because I'm mad, I don't want to touch you, or I don't want you to touch me. Right. And subsequently, one day of not touching turns into 2 days of not touching, into 3 days of not touching, into 4 days. And by that point, you're not releasing any of the oxytocin either. So there's no way for you to actually come back and get chemically connected again. Okay. And so then that's how it kind of exacerbates, right? So with couples who are constantly fighting but having sex, they tend to stay together longer, which gives more probability that they can work it out, versus couples who are fighting and not having sex or intimacy. It actually accelerates the destruction of the relationship. So sometimes that means that you got to step outside of yourself. You mad at your man, like a woman or a man is mad at their partner or whatever, and you don't want to be touched. If you want to keep that relationship going, go ahead and let them touch you.
So it's one of the things that have to be separated sometimes. I got you.
You got to compartmentalize sometimes, but that's what I think successful relationships do have elements of compartmentalization. There's some things you got to kind of just get over. It doesn't mean that you guys get to have sex and all of a sudden the issue is gone. No, it means that we have sex, we bring ourselves down, and then maybe we're in a better place because we're calm and we have a sense of a high that we can go ahead and try to figure out what's going on with us. But that also includes using, say, like the 4-step problem solving process or the 6-step communication process. Those are additional tools that you can use. But the foundation of that is the intimacy. And it makes sense, right, Carl? We all came from a body. We all once lived inside of a body and came through a body. We have to stay connected to a body. It's part of our attachment. It's what makes sense. It's also why, I know it seems like a far jump, but it's also why solitary confinement is such a horrible. It's why it's such a horrible consequence, because the body and the mind needs connection. And when it doesn't have connection, including physical touch, it starts to deteriorate. And some folks will find physical touch at any means necessary, and that's when they start hitting, right? Because the body is still touching. It's not releasing the oxytocin, but the nerves are still kind of being stimulated. So we need it. We need it. But what were you going to say about solitary confinement?
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, and that goes to that conversation around where people are saying that it is a horrible thing because you're going days without touching people already in an environment where you really don't touch anybody anyway. So it just makes that situation a lot worse than what it should be at that point. I know there's a lot of discussion around that topic as well.
Yeah, it is. And it's a need. And sometimes we forget it's a need, and not just a want. I think again, in our society, we use words like need and want interchangeably when they're absolutely two different things. But our body, think about it this way, in order for a chemical to be released, the body needs to be touched, right? So you can touch it yourself or somebody else can touch it with you, but you still have to have some form of touch. And that's an actual need. It's not a want. It's also, like we talked about in the beginning, where people sometimes find themselves in compromising positions because their body needs the touch. They're releasing the oxytocin, they're releasing the dopamine, and they happen to be doing it with this deadbeat, right? But they still keep going back to this deadbeat because the body needs something and they don't know how to get it from other sources or from other places, etc. So it's also why I'm also, it sounds crazy, but I went to Amsterdam about 2 years ago, and I'm all the way here for the red light district and I'm here for legalized prostitution and all of that stuff, because we all have a need for touch. And if you're not going to get it in these more traditional ways, then you need to get it somewhere else. So I know you're probably like, Linnell, where the hell did that come from? That just jumped out of nowhere. But it all goes back to the fact that these are needs.
I guess that's why they have it. There's a couple of the ranches in the States that they allow that same thing. So I mean, it's there for a reason.
It is. And you know what's crazy? When I visited Paris a few years ago, and here goes my silly behind with my cohort members. We decided we're gonna do an Airbnb. We don't know a single daggone thing about Paris. Where do we end up? In their little prostitution kind of area. We go outside and the prostitutes outside too. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, Lord Jesus, what are we doing?
I was like, I was on the hill in Korea.
Exactly. And I'm sitting here like, this is too much. I just wanted to go shopping, and now I gotta see your areola. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is going on here?
Hey,
that's a nice areola, by the way. Huh?
See, I got some good rates though.
Oh, listen. I had some fun now, and I had some fun. But what was interesting about it, because I am me, I wanted to talk to some of the ladies that were working. I wanted to figure out what was going on with them, right? And France has a socialist kind of system as well. So everybody kind of benefits from the process. So what they were telling me, what some of these, the ladies that were working were telling me, is that they actually allow for some slight form of legalization around prostitution, because they realize that it keeps the men that are visiting them, it keeps them calm. And these are often highly powerful men who are having to make a lot of decisions, and there's a lot of pressure that's put on them because the patriarchal society is still in play. So when a man has these different releases, and not just the sexual release of an orgasm, but the chemical release of oxytocin and dopamine, it keeps them calm. And when they're calm, they're able to make better decisions at work, and they're able to make better decisions in their life. And then there's less crime as well, both white collar and blue collar crime. So that's why prostitution is not as poorly looked down upon in some other countries like France, as it is in the United States, because their rationale behind prostitution is around how it actually benefits society because it benefits the individual person, as opposed to thinking that it's some sort of nasty sin kind of situation. It's also why, although the city of Amsterdam is trying to get rid of tourists coming in to smoke weed, they're not trying to get rid of the red light district, because they recognize that it's a sense of calm. In fact, the red light district in Amsterdam, because I'm a nerd and I went to Amsterdam, but the red light district in Amsterdam was originated because of the ports that were coming in, the ports that were in Amsterdam, and the sailors that were coming in. So the ladies were kind of there available so that the sailors could have the touch that they needed and the sex that they needed, and then they could get back on their ships and get back to work. So it wasn't designed for the citizens of Amsterdam as much it was designed for the tourists, or not the tourists, but the sailors who were coming in to do business exchanges with the people that were there.
Oh, interesting. Didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm a nerd. You know, I'm a nerd. I always have been.
And even having those outlets, it probably helps a lot of people in the States in general, as opposed to, like, and take out, those fetishes legally without doing other things, the nefarious acts and things like that. Aside from giving them another outlet to actually explore, what actually works for them, and still get that touch that they need. So that's interesting that they recognize that over there and say, all right, well, we're going to keep it because it actually benefits everybody as a whole and keeps things down. Then you get the people in power here that also on the low, pay for the high end call girls and things like that, which some of them need to be a little bit more calm, need a little bit more of that to calm down, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, so it does seem like it plays into a whole lot of different things, especially with that whole comment effect. At the same time, it's never too early in the morning to start your day with that. So just make sure you get that in and have a great day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, whatever people's preference and time of day is and all of that. What you said a second ago made me think about the fact that, sometimes folks end up going to these professional sex workers because they're trying to live out certain fantasies or fetishes and taboos, which then brings me back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of couples. How powerful would it be to be completely vulnerable to tell your partner what your fetishes are, or completely vulnerable to tell your partner what your fantasies are? Again, I think that we still keep living in these molds that were created by whom? I don't know. But these ideas that a lady must be this way and a man must be this way, and a super macho masculine man must be this way, and a super feminine woman must be and we put ourselves in these boxes where we don't even get to create intimacy in sharing our sexual ideas, right? Like, I recently had someone tell me about how they like to watch certain sexual experiences, but don't necessarily want to tell their partner because their partner is going to judge them. And I'm like, first, you don't really know if your partner is going to judge you or not because you haven't said anything to them. Next, your partner might actually be thinking the exact same thing and afraid to tell you because they think you're going to judge them. And in the end, you guys are living this life together where both of you guys have these separate fantasies that could really be shared with each other, but they're not. And so you guys are still having some senses of isolation, even within the marriage, even within a couple in a relationship. And how truly unfortunate that is, right? Like, imagine living the next, we're still young. So imagine living the next 20, 30 years having a fantasy that we've never talked about, or a fantasy that we never experienced. Like, if somebody had a dream or a goal and they lived it for 30 years, or they hid it for 30 years, we'd be like, what the hell, right? I was about to cuss, my bad. But we'd be like, what the hell? Like, you've been holding this in for 30 years. You know how much you could have been enjoying life if you expressed it. But we don't take that same kind of effort when it comes to sex and intimacy. And it's such a restrictive experience. Like, and then even from a spiritual position, I don't think that God put us on this earth to not live life fully. Like, Why do we have all these nerve endings? Why do we have all these chemicals in our body? Why are these things such a puzzle if God didn't want us to explore them? You know what I mean? Like, why did he give it to us if we can't use it? You know?
And it's definitely that communication aspect, right? Closed mouths don't get fed. And I tell people that all the time. Like, if you don't say what you want or what you want to do, then you're just gonna be sitting there pouting or mad or thinking about some other stuff because you open your mouth and say that, and nobody can read your mind, right? So it's just it's always one thing to remember: this closed mouths don't get fed. Just you gotta do what you want or explain what you want and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's so funny because going back to that person that I was talking about before, they went ahead and told their partner what they wanted, and their partner was down for the cause, honey. It was like down, let's do it down, right? So then later I get a call like, yo, you wouldn't believe they was okay with it. And I was like, no, I believe it. You know what I mean? Because again, the partner is probably thinking the same thing, but is afraid to say anything. Like, we got to use courage in our relationships, and we got to use vulnerability in our relationships, and we got to tell people what we really like and what we don't like. That's especially if you're married, because you've committed to being with this person for the rest of your life.
Right.
Like, the rest of your life, nah, Slim, you better do everything that I need, and I'm gonna do everything you need, because we got to make this work. You know what I'm saying? Like, so people, stop being prude. That's my thing. Stop being a prude.
Yeah, I know you gotta go at the top of the hour, so
I do. Oh my goodness, I'm sitting here chit chatting. I forgot what time it was. I'm sitting here. My client gonna be sitting here looking at me like, "Girl, where you at, Dr. Plummer?" I'll be like, "I was chit chatting with Carl."
So we go. Like I said, the conversation is not over though, so we will pick this up at a later date to go in it. But is there anything else that you want to leave us with for today?
Again, the major takeaway is touch. Like, touch each other. There's a difference between sex and intimacy. There can be an intersection, but it's okay if they're separate. Touch yourself, touch somebody else with their consent, of course, and have a good time. Release the oxytocin and feel good. If you have any other questions, you could definitely reach out to me individually too. You can find me on Onyx on Instagram at Onyx Therapy Group, or you can find me on my personal page, which is public, which is Mahogany Sunshine. Mahogany because my skin is dark, baby, and I feel like sunshine. So Mahogany Sunshine or Onyx Therapy Group, and I can answer your questions. So feel free to hit me up and let me know. Also, hit us up on our website if you have any questions or you want to participate in any type of therapy. We are getting a sex coach soon who will be guiding folks through sexual experiences. And that's a little taboo in the Black community, but we have a good handle, a good cultural perspective on how we're going to help, because good, healthy sexual behaviors affects the mental health in a positive way. And when our mental health is strong, other elements and aspects of our life tend to be strong as well.
Right. Every time you be like, yeah, touch that damn tweet song, there goes my shirt over my head, pops in my head. I don't know why I ain't heard that song in a long time, but that song keeps popping in my head.
And watch you go play it today. You need to go play. I'm probably gonna go play it myself.
So it was good talking to you, and like I said, I'll let you get back to it, and we'll catch up later.
All right, Carl.